Welcome to the Wee Woolly Wonderfuls knitted bunny tutorial, and we sewed the head on in our last tutorial and now we're sewing the arms on. For this you're going to need your bunny, the arms, scissors, your needle and a few pins. Most people tend to have a few sewing pins. If you don't have any, we do have them on our website for £2 to £3, and you get a set of 30, which are nice big long strong needles. You can use the smaller ones, you might need to use a few extra, but these are pretty big so they tend to hold limbs in place quite securely. Right, so let's get started. So we're going to put our arms obviously on the sides, and I like to put this section on the top, so I just think it's a nicer finish. The other side isn't as nice, and obviously it's got the seam, so we need this side on the top, the seam underneath. So we're going to go for a row or two below the neck, and I tend to tilt them forward slightly. You can have them down like that, but I just do think they look better tilted slightly forward, but obviously it's personal preference. So this is the strand we left for sewing them on. If you don't have that, then you can knot a long strand 30 to 40 centimeters long and attach it to sew on. So we're going to point them slightly forward, just under the neck, pop some pins in, and we're going to pin them both on, and then we're going to see what we think they look like. Always try and get things in position, don't just start sewing, because that's how you end up with them looking a little lopsided or not quite been in the right position. This is how to get a more professional finish. So we're looking for somewhere in the middle, just below, but we've got it higher at the top and a few rows lower at the bottom, just so we've got that tilt coming forward. So these will hold it securely. If you've got so the smaller pins, you'll probably need a few extra, but 2 will often hold it with these because they're pretty big. So now we're going to have a look at our bunny and see what we think. Do those look even? Now you're looking to see if they look even across here, and then when you turn them, do they look even as well? I'm not sure if that needs moving slightly down like that. And we just want to make sure that they look in a nice position before we sew them on. So we're just checking for similar height, similar position, and just look at the bunny in general and think, do they look right? One might look a bit higher or lower, so just adjust one. One might look too far round or too far back, so just adjust it so that you're happy with how it looks. I think that needs to be a touch higher and a little bit further forward, so we'll just adjust it. The more you concentrate and focus and get them looking even, the better finish you're going to get, because it's far easier to alter at this stage than try and take them off later. So I think we're quite happy with that. So we're going to thread the needle for one of the arms. So all we're going to do is thread that onto our needle. Excuse me. I'm going to turn it this way. I'm going to start sewing. So I'm going to zoom in a little bit just so it's a bit easier to see. There we go. Now, we can't really do exactly the same technique as we did with the head. So what we're going to do, I'm just going to come up here. Now we're aiming to sew on just below that top edge. So we'll bring our needle up. I wouldn't go over the top because then you've got an unsightly stitch across there. What we're trying to do is do small neat stitches but keep them as hidden as possible. So we've come up here, so I'm going to go back down here, so it's just a small stitch, and come up further away. If you can come up here, all the better, but it's just not always possible. So that's one little stitch, and now we're going to go where we came up. So I'm just going back down there, and then I'm going to come out somewhere else. What we're trying to do is going to get little stitches a lot of the way across. We don't just want little stitches at one end, we want them at both ends and in the middle, and probably a couple in between, just to make sure it's secured, sewn on securely all the way. So I'll do a little stitch here, I'll pop that down. Make sure you're going right into the bunny, not just into the arm, because it's got to go through the bunny to make sure it's securely fastened on. Now what I'm going to do is try and come up now the other end of the arm. Let's move things around gently because I don't want to move the position of the arm. I'll come up here. If you're worried it's moving around, pop some extra pins in. So you've just got a tiny little stitch there, so you can't really see that. I've come up here, so I'm just going to go back down, slightly further away from where I come up. We're back at the other end again, so gently pull that. So you want to pull it so that your stitch completely disappears, but not so that you're pulling it so tight it's puckering. So we've done that, so I'm going to come up, back down again where we came up, and come up sort of over here. We haven't really got a stitch just to that area, so you're just looking to make sure you've got a little stitch, maybe in the middle, at both ends, and the two in between, so at least 5, but I would say try and add a few more possible. If you can't get your needle out, come out between a stitch on the body if you can't get it right across into your arm, and then just go back down the same one, and that'll mean it's invisible. And come out now. We need maybe another little stitch at this end just to make sure we've got a stitch right on each end so the arms aren't loose. Again, if you're giving this to a young child, definitely add lots of extra stitches, because the arms will get pulled around a lot, and Bunny will get pulled around by his arms, I imagine, quite regularly. Oops, seem to have a little thread there. Let's make sure we pull that through, and then we're going to go up, so we've got a stitch at this end. And there's lots of different ways of sewing, but I found this way makes it pretty invisible. So we've got them all along now. So what I want to do now is sew underneath as well. So I'm going to take my pins out because the arm's in position. Lift the arm up. Now we've come out here. So I'm just going to go back in very similar space so we're not leaving big stitches around. Now underneath it doesn't have to be quite as tidy. So what I tend to do is sew in now a little bit on the body and a little bit on the coming up above the edge of the arm, like so. I'm just going to gently sew across so we can do our stitching again we did before. So we're doing a stitch like so, and then a little stitch here, just like a double stitching. So instead of just on the top, we're going right across the bottom as well. Another one there, and another one here. But say if it's for a young child, add lots of extra stitches and maybe do across this bottom part twice, just to make sure it's extra secure, because we'll get some pulling around. Just keep an eye on it. If it becomes loose anytime, there's nothing to stop you just sewing it back on again. So let's pull it and make sure it seems quite strong. And once we finish, what we're going to do is, I'm going back in where I came out, go up into the body again, like we did for the head, come out between a gap, go back in again, and back out. So we're doing that a few times. Do a few extra if you're a little concerned and want it extra secure, just to make sure that end never comes loose. And then like we did before, we're just going to pull it a little bit more taut, cut it, and that just means the end disappears inside. So what I do now is, I'll just zoom back out again, and we will have another look at our bunny now. Now his arm's sewn on, and make sure they still look even, because if it's slightly moved, we want to make sure that one matches so they are the same. So you can see there, it's pretty neatly sewn on. All you can see is that nice top layer, and underneath it's pulled quite tight and it's quite secure, but on the top you wouldn't even see any stitches. You wouldn't know how that arm was sewn on. So now what we're going to do next is check this is nice and level still, and we're still happy with it, and then we're going to repeat and sew the arm on the other side in exactly the same way, so with the small stitches, and then finish off your thread. So if you like to continue and sew on the second arm, and then we will see you again in the next video, ready to sew the next part on.